step in the process. The second step is clearly landowner consent, and we'd be seeking that in accordance with the conditions of the Reserve Management Plan, the Reserve Act itself. So there are two steps to this, the first of which is the resource consent process.
I think, sorry, just to clarify, I think Member Cohen was asking about the difference in the processes for the notification. So why did you, I think he's saying, why did you put emphasis on the Resource Management Act process when the landowner consent process is quite a different one? Is that correct, Member Cohen?
Yes.
Well, no, they're equally important.
Okay. Any further questions?
Yeah, there was just clarification, and it comes up in our officers' reports as well, is this whole thing about 30% community usage within the facility that you're suggesting. And I'm just seeking clarification that given that the Takapuna Boating Club already has a facility down there in regards to the rescue equipment, and Wakarama also has existing use, when you're talking about the 30%, we're obviously talking about an additional 30%, not the ones we've already got, is that?
Correct.
So you're looking at an additional 30% over and above Wakarama and the Takapuna Boating Club.
Correct.
That's correct. Thank you.
So that's Member Cohen's questions. I just had one, Mr. Wall, and it was in relation to the point that you made about how you said that the northern end of the northern reserve, the Takapuna Beach Reserve, is suitable as a suitable site. But you also said that you'd considered alternatives, or were sorry, to ask a question, were alternatives considered within Takapuna and outside of Takapuna, or is this just the only site that you wanted, and so the only site that you presented?
No, I think Mr Abercrombie will cover this. There'll be many other sites and many studies done over the years, and more recently, as requested by the chair of the local board, right towards the end of this process, the then chair of the local board.
Oh, okay, thank you. Right, so members, with that, if there are no further questions, I'd like to move A and B, which has now been amended, so that it's just for Mr Wall and the Harbour Access Trust. Seconded by Member Hale. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. We'll now proceed to the last deputation before we go to public forum, and that's from Mr Abercrombie on behalf of Yachting New Zealand. Mr Abercrombie, the same process applies with the time, as little credibility as it might have at this point. So if you could please stick as close to that time and include time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and the local board for providing the opportunity for everyone to have their say today, and would appreciate the respect that other speakers have had. As you know, my name's David Abercrombie. I've been a local resident in Takapuna for nearly 60 years, and I'm the Chief Executive of Yachting New Zealand. My belief is that there is a real need in Auckland for more open green space, and that the Marine Community Activity Hub will deliver this in spades. The project is our attempt to future-proof this space, increase our community's access to the jewel in the Auckland crown, and provide an environment where our most talented kids can flourish. We would ask that the local board base any future decisions made regarding the Northern Activity Zone on facts, not on emotion or on misinformation. What is being proposed is a community facility incorporating a high-performance centre. It will be available to the community.
Sorry, I'm just getting a signal asking if you could speak up. So, David, if you could speak closer into the microphone. Sorry, thank you, Terry.
It may have a little to do with my vertically challenged state.
I'm not going to say that, but continue. I've turned it up to the maximum as well. There you go. Hopefully that can solve that.
It's the last thing I've been accused of is being quiet. The facility as it's being proposed will be available to community groups for hire, and providing opportunities for education, marine, coast guard, learn to sail programs, for children, for youth, for the environment, Project Jonah, Sir Peter Blake Trust focusing on things like environmental protection, culture, iwi participation, charity, for the community, storage areas, changing rooms, showers, and much needed meeting rooms. There will be a high performance centre, and I make no excuse for that, but it will also provide family space for relaxation, play and enjoyment. The campground covers 6,765 square metres, 41.4% of the legal reserve. Yes, There have been arguments that we exclude the reclamation or the ramps and the parking areas. But if you do that, all it does is it reduces the available public space, because it actually increases the percentage that the campground takes up of the flat reserve. Our vision is to return the reserve back to the community. Several sites were considered in the site selection process. We've heard 2 on the Strand, the Northern Activity Zone. Tor Bay, Murray's Bay, Milford, Wakateri and Akahu Bay were all considered, and I'm happy to answer questions later in regards to why those areas were excluded. The Chair at the time, Mr Cohen, requested an independent review of those site options, and those overwhelmingly came out in support of the proposed zone on the Northern Activity Zone. It's unfortunate that this report has been confidential and not shared with the community, and has not helped in the understanding and the full gambit of issues relating to the proposed options. Takapuna is recognised as having the best sailing waters in Auckland. It has the best launching facilities, and there is its proximity to the National Training Centre. But what upsets me more than anything are the myths relating to what Yachting New Zealand does and how the centre was proposed to operate. I can assure you that those promoting this facility, and I refer to Mr Wall and members of the Harbour Access Trust, have been through this process, putting in over 2,000 hours of their own time, generously and freely, and they do not deserve the criticism and abuse thrown at them by certain members of the public. They're not property developers, and they're not seeking personal financial gain out of what they are trying to achieve for a community centre for the youth of New Zealand. A working party was put together to investigate options for the Northern Activity Zone, as I think Mr Cohen alluded to previously, and that is the basis on which the recent poll was generated. And he mentions that affected parties were invited to participate. That is true. But in actual fact, Yachting New Zealand and Harbour Access Trust were excluded from the process. Excuse me, let me finish, please.
Okay, sorry, wait, a point of order has been called. I'm going to stop the time and just ask that the member who has raised the point of order please clarify what is the standing order that you're being...
Misrepresentation.
Okay, that particular standing order relating to a member raising an opportunity to clarify an earlier statement is only in relation to a meeting itself. So if it was a misrepresentation of something you had stated earlier in this meeting, then I would be willing to allow that, but it's not from what I gather, it's not a statement that you've made in this meeting, Member Cohen. So no, I don't believe that falls within standing orders. So I'm going to rule that is... So let me just quickly check. So under standing orders, it's not disrespectful, it's not malicious language or offensive. Member, I'm sorry, Member Cohen, you'll just have to address it in the questions or in the speaking turn. I can't see, in the very broad point that you've raised around misrepresentation, I can't see how it falls within. No, Member Cohen, let me be very clear. I am ruling that you will have to raise that point during the substantive debate, question, or later on the meeting. That's not a point of order. So I'm ruling that it is not a point of order. Point of order from Member Gillen.
Point of order, Mr Chair. I seek that you suspend standing orders and allow Member Cohen to make an explanation on the accusations that have been made.
I will not.
I was part of the working party.
Okay,
and
I'm going to call you in. I'm going to call you in.
Invited and refused to attend.
Member Gillen, I hear sufficient detail. I hear sufficient detail. I have a real issue with standing orders being used in that way. Member Gillen, you know full well that that is not a point that you can raise within standing orders. So, no, I will not be suspending standing orders, because in order to suspend standing orders, this meeting has no credibility to occur. So I will not be suspending standing orders. Furthermore, a lot of standing orders is required by Local Government Act. So if we want to make any decision tonight, we are not capable of suspending standing orders. So I'm going to rule that no, I'm still ruling. So even if it's a request for me to suspend a specific standing order, I'm not willing to do so in this meeting. I am not willing to allow that motion to be put. You would require 75% of members to do so, and I'm not going to put it. So I'm ruling that's out of order. Member Cohen, this better be a fresh point of order.
Can I make a personal statement?
No, you cannot at this stage. You can do so once the presentation has completed. So I'm going to allow the last 5 minutes that Mr. Abercrombie has to continue, and then you can do so. There's no urgency, and I think this is a taster of what was experienced before. But anyway, continue.
Affected parties were invited to participate. Yachting New Zealand and Harbour Access Trust were excluded from this process through being unable to comply with unreasonable restrictions placed on them by the then Chair, Mike Cohen. We did not refuse to attend, and I had a meeting with Mr. Cohen in his office, and we met the group in here, and it was agreed that our ideas would not be shared. We recognise there is a strong desire to create open green and public space. The campground to many is unwelcoming, and it is not entirely open to the public. It is a commercial entity which benefit a fortunate few individuals who gain significant financial benefit and put nothing back into the community. The proposal is fully accessible and open to the public. What does make it appealing is the 372 square metres of fully landscaped and accessible roof that will create a greater connection between the foreshore and the reserve and excludes no one. The only area that in the proposal that is not available to the public for access is the 200 square metres of the Takapuna Boating Club storage sheds. I've heard many times that 400 boats will be left all over the reserve and the public won't have any access. This is totally unfounded. There are 10 Olympic classes, and the hard stand will be able to accommodate between 15 and 25 boats, depending on the classes that are supported at the time. The internal storage area will house around 50 boats, and no powered vessels will be kept within that storage area. Yacht transport. Boats won't be towed from the storage area to the boat ramp. They would be pulled on beach trolleys. And the fact that we have dedicated storage area means that the beach trolleys and the boats will have somewhere to stay, rather than being left on the reserve or on the boat ramp as they presently are. Yachting New Zealand will enter into an operational plan, an agreed operational plan with Auckland Council. They will manage the storage facility, and a set of rules will be devised to control and manage movement of boats to and from the water and for their storage. This is not going to be a dumping ground for boats. There are many misconceptions and mistruths about the number of people that will be operating and when they will be there. 30% of our athletes' time is spent at the National Training Centre, and the proximity to the National Training Centre is very important in terms of the location of the marine hub. Operating hours for Yachting New Zealand and for their athletes and coaches is during the week between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. most days. But in saying that, our teams spend between 120 and 150 days travelling, competing and training offshore. This doesn't mean, though, that a high-performance centre for sailors is unnecessary. What it does do, it indicates that large periods of time will make the facility available for public use. The hard stand area, I've heard many people saying that the noise of slapping halyards and masts will keep people awake. No Olympic boats have external halyards, and I can assure you there will be no commotion and disturbance to the local community. The high performance team has 18 to 20 sailors, 5 full-time staff including coaches, and additional 2 or 3 contracted coaches who are employed overseas to support international campaigns. Staff numbers vary year on year, but not greatly. Yachting New Zealand is a not-for-profit organisation, but it does invest and put over $400,000 a year into community initiatives, including land sale, water safety and drowning prevention.